In this section, we're going to try and find Mario's X position subpixel if it exists. So the way we can kind of tell if subpixel values exist is if while you're moving, there is a sudden change in speed where there is a slight jump. So what's happening? Basically, with a subpixel, it is a fraction of a pixel. So when he's moving, that subpixel value will be increasing, and if there is a sudden jump, once it hits the threshold, like once it carries over, his speed or his position will actually increase like a pixel. So we can, if we watch while Mario moves, we can see if there's any sudden jumps. So we're going to watch his position here. So right now I have his position here on screen. I've selected options, display watches on screen. So we're going to see he's starting to move now. His first stop 933. So 1 pixel. 1. And okay. So right there, 942. 943, 945. So he actually changed his speed from 1 to 2. So the way we can test this now is if I go back, we're going to try and find a spot where it jumps to immediately. There. So now that it has carried over in this position with the subpixel value, it should be at the lowest point. So I'm going to start a new search now, and I'm going to assume that it's going to be greater than on the next pixel, and jump. Search, search, search. Okay, so now it rolled over. His position went from 948 to 950. So it should be less than now. I'm going to search, and we have 1 position, or actually 1 address. So this should be a subpixel value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to poke this to 0, and I'm going to freeze it. Now the reason why I'm going to be doing this is that I want to make sure that when he starts moving again, his speed will not carry over and it won't just keep increasing in that way. So let's keep watching this here. One. So basically it looks like that is working. I'm not seeing any jumps. So that may be his subpixel X value. Pretty sure that's what it is. So we're going to add it to the list. Mario X subpixel. Now right now it should be unsigned. Yes, that's correct. And 1 byte. And we're going to save that. So that's one way of finding a subpixel, doing it in that manner. So that is one way of finding the Mario X subpixel. Now there's let me introduce a couple other ways of trying to find these fairly elusive values. Now, what you can do is, a lot of times, if you use a low amount of inputs, you will actually change the subpixel value. But it can be kind of tricky to tell if what you're doing is even having an effect. So what I'm going to do here is spread out a lot of single write inputs. And I'm going to clone this a couple times here. I think I accidentally cloned something the wrong way, but that's fine. I'll just go over here and clean this up a little. Okay, so there's going to be these single R inputs spread out over a long area. What's going to happen is that if there is a subpixel, and if this method modifies the subpixel, at some point we should expect to see the carryover where it adds a pixel to Mario's position. So let us take a look and see if this has any effect at all. So it's starting at 933. Okay. No. No, no. No. It doesn't look like it, but the subpixel may be a very small increment. So I'm just going to go ahead and clone a whole bunch of these and then kind of hope that this will be a way of finding it. Ah, it did. Okay. And where did that occur? Here. Okay. So I'm going to save this. I'm going to update the branch. And now that we know that it increases every time, it should be fairly simple to find it. So increases, same thing, previous value greater than greater than greater than greater than. So it's down to two values here, 14 and 13dA. If we go back, if we rewind, $14 doesn't quite act like what we would expect it to do. It looks like it's more of a counter or a timer. Now if we compare, it's the same address as before. So that is the subpixel value there. That's a second way of finding it. One other way of possibly finding the subpixel value would be if you're right-clicking in the RAM watch on his position and go to View in Hex Editor. If you watch this area while he's moving, you may be able to see it if it's changing in regular jumps, usually in powers of 2, like 8 or 16 or 32. One other way you may be able to find the subpixel value is if you try and find the average speed And then using that average speed, you may be able to find the subpixel change per frame. So for instance, if we were to try and find his average speed here, if we move, so I know that this is a carryover from this frame to this frame. You see how he moves 2 pixels? So we're going to start here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it carried over. So 5 pixels per frame. Now the idea is that we get that fractional part, and then that fractional part we could expect to be the change per frame, and then we could possibly search for that. However, in Super Mario World, it's not regular. If we were to watch this, you see how it changes? That's not a regular change. It's not changing 16 subpixels every frame, or 32 or 64. It's not doing that. However, if what we were looking at was correct, and if this game had moved in a regular way, you can find it in this way. You want to get the part here, the 4th, and then you want to try and find what the byte would be of that part. So what is a 4th of a byte? It would be 256 divided by 4, which is 64. So if this game was regular, what you could do is, if you went to RAM search, let's say jump there. You may be able to search the different by here. And if we searched, see in this specific frame here, the difference does show up here. This is the same subpixel value as that we've seen before. It actually did show it. However, if we went to the next frame, the difference is not 64. So it wouldn't show up. We were just lucky. But sometimes that's all it takes. But you know. But that just to know that if it is a regular changing type of game where the subpixel changes regularly, this could work for you to find a subpixel value. Let's try finding Mario's Y subpixel value. Now, you want to find somewhere where the Y would be constant. Now, if you're jumping, that's not a good example because there's that downward force. So once he jumps, his speed will be decreasing. He reaches the apex, then he starts falling. So the idea that I have is that while he's falling, his speed will reach some sort of maximum. Now, however, while he's falling, we want to see if there is some sort of wiggle room, if there's like a subpixel involved, where I'm thinking that it's going to get some sort of speed, and then every once in a while, every couple frames, there'll be an extra pixel added, and that should help us find a Y subpixel. So let's try this. We are going to start jumping. I got a little error, and I want to see what this looks like. What kind of speed is he having here? So it looks like every frame he's getting 4 or 5. let me look at that again. And we can see that the speed seems to reach a maximum of 70. 5. Let's see, 4, 4, 4, 5. So about every 4 frames. Let's see. Okay, so there's a 5. So we could say that there's a carryover at that point. So it's at its lowest point. Say new. And now for the next 3 frames, we're going to keep doing a greater than search, because I'm assuming that the Y subpixel is increasing. Search. Oh wait, that one was a 5. Oops. Okay, so let's start again. Let's start from here. Okay, so new search. 1, search. 2, search. Okay, so actually it is like every 3. And then it does the, I guess it changed. So maybe that subpixel is increasing more, like some sort of acceleration going on. Okay, so we got some addresses here though. Let's take a look and see if any of these make sense. We'll do the same thing as before, where we're gonna try and see if these values here will carry over, like have a, they'll change, they'll basically go from 200 and then go down to a much lower value, as though it's being added and there's a carryover. So let's take a look at any of these. Let's look at, okay, so from this frame to this frame, there should be a carryover. The frame, the speed is at its max, yet it's varying between 4 and 5 pixels per frame, and this is a 5 pixel speed one. So I'm assuming that it is going to loop. So let's take a look. Okay. So now I'm going to, I want the ones that are much less. So search. All right. We have 3 possible subpixel Ys here. Which ones might make sense? That top one, no, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't seem to move in any regular fashion, and a subpixel increment of 1 is highly unlikely. If it was doing some sort of 1, I think it would be a much larger range, so I'm just going to remove that one. Let's look at these other ones. Those two look pretty good. They look very similar. Okay. So I am going to make a branch here. Okay. And then a branch when he lands. So what I'm going to do is I am going to try and input a value and then freeze it. And I would expect that his position will be less because there will be no carryover for the Y position, because it just remains at a constant 0. So his position will be less, and he very well might not land. Yes, he does land though. All right, so let's see. Y352, Y352. That's probably not it. That's probably not the value. Let me unfreeze that and check this one. Poke address 0. Then freeze it. Okay. Right, he doesn't land. That's most likely it. And what is his position? It is 352. And when he lands, if I look at the when I hover over the index and take a look at the screenshot, his position is 352 as well. I guess it is subpixels that determine that. Let's see. Yeah. Very interesting. All right. It looks like we have our Y. And I am going to edit this. Mario Y subpixel. One thing I would like to point out at this point is that, are you noticing the various offsets here in the addresses? They're always right next to each other and 2 apart. Same as the subpixel. So if you had thought perhaps that you may be able to just eyeball it, you were correct. You may be able to just guess it right off the bat what the Y subpixel was. If you look at the hex editor, this is it right here, and it would be right next to it. And you could just freeze it, or like poke 0 and freeze it and just test it instead of having to do all the searching. If you were correct in your assumption of how the offsets work and how they're right next to each other. So using those 2 methods, you can find the Y fairly handily.